All right, we have more important things to do. Cynthia Mills is the founder, president, and CEO of the Leaders Haven, and she's also the co-author of The Big Secret with Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. That was a huge book. Please welcome to Live from Studio 6B, Cynthia Mills. Hi, Cynthia. How are you?
Been great. It's great to be with you today.
It's great to be with you as well. So, as I said, you co-authored with Jack Canfield The Big Secret, and your chapter in there, Align for Impact, received an Editor's Choice Award. So, first of all, congratulations on that book. His book, The Chicken Soup Book, was a huge book. Why did you want to write this chapter? And tell me about it.
Sure. Well, there are so many extraneous distractions that are happening in companies and organizations in our lives. And it's very difficult to focus these days. So if we can figure out how to really laser in on what's going to make a transformational difference and then actually put our energy to that first, we have a shot at achieving a really great impact. You know, what I find with clients is that if you're out of alignment, then strategy and lives can be devastated. But if you're in alignment, you have an opportunity to really maximize and live some dreams. So the chapter outlines, both from a professional and a business standpoint, some questions to walk you through the processes of that, both as a professional and also as a company leader or owner.
Yeah, and speaking of company leaders, I know you've been a CEO of many organizations, international and national organizations. How have those experiences informed you and your clients and what do you do and what do you hope to accomplish in when you're working together like that?
There is nothing more exciting than when you have a group of leaders who are actually able to visualize what will be different from a transformational outcome, and then to get everyone behind it and make it happen. And as a CEO, I had the opportunity to experience those kind of moments with organizations and to see what's possible. And so the work that I do with clients, whether it's business strategy or leadership development or succession planning, even coaching, you know, what I'm seeking for them is for them to be able to experience those transformational moments and exceed their expectations.
Yeah, that's great. Vin?
Hi, Vincent Buda here. Thanks for coming on today. I also have served on a few boards. I've had a more traditional business career in the past, so I'm really fascinated by what you're doing. And by the way, it is so important what you're doing, and I'll tell you why I say that, and I have a question for you. Boards in general, you know, you go to get a company funded, and you want to have a good board, right? Good people around you. And then you also have boards that try and help companies move forward in the right direction. And I've struggled with that personally. As a board member, and you are the quote-unquote board whisperer, right? I'm curious how you mine through the compliance side, which often boards get caught up in and can't get their heads out of, to effective strategy to actually help. I haven't found that secret, to be honest, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are there.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I think one of the biggest challenges for board members is when they come onto a board, they bring with them all of this experience and success. And so they bring that, though, from a very focused perspective on their own experience. And you come to a board of directors and you have a whole group of people that now need to figure out what that strategy is going to be. And what I've found over time is that a lot of people don't know how to be a great board member. They know how to be a great, very successful business person, but being a board member there's a body of law. You know, there's a body of knowledge, and then there's how do you let the CEO be a great CEO and implement strategy while you have the board of directors focused on strategy. So I think part of the answer to your question is discipline around what the role of the board is versus what the role of the CEO is, and spending time in strategic retreats focusing on strategy and assuming that you've got a great executive team that's going to make the execution and the compliance happen. Oversight, but not meddling.
Right. Right. I get that totally. And believe me, all those points are very well taken, because they're hard to get boards to be effective. And you mentioned retreats, and that sort of centers around my next question. I've also done the retreats, and they're good. And you get people together and you have think tank and you whiteboard. But then sometimes, many times, you leave and you don't get the results, or you leave and you kind of go back to your old stuff. So how do you evaluate sort of the biggest missed opportunities from these retreats, and what can be done to actually help the CEO, be better and effectuate the business?
I have both been in and led the strategic high, and everybody leaves and then they go home to the lists.
Yes.
And the emails. And so the bottom line to that is when I work with clients, I work on the translation of the retreat experience to operationalizing excellence and strategy. And the way to do that is literally to have strategic agendas. You need to have strategic multi-year budgets, which moves you from an operational focus to a strategy focus. And then in addition to that, you have to integrate that with the performance review process. And so if you drive it through the organization, you're not putting strategy on top of what a company or business already does. The strategic plan is actually becoming the roadmap for the entire company. And that's the key to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. One quick one, and I want to add in here, Damon, is there any difference between the public sector and private sector, not as it relates to, I know the compliance and all that stuff is more complicated, but as a board, as a functioning board, do you see differences? Because the private board is, doesn't have, they have fiduciary responsibility, but not that level of compliance issues. So I'm curious, do you see a difference?
Yeah, I mean, and there's also the area of tax exempt boards. And so I think the commonality is board dynamics and great board governance. The challenge is then what are the body of laws that they have to execute that fiduciary responsibility under is the difference. But great board dynamics and great strategy. I work in the for-profit sector as well as the tax exempt sector, and I can tell you that getting to great strategy is the same process.
Good.
We're speaking with Cynthia Mills. She's the founder, president, and CEO of The Leaders Haven. You can visit them online at theleadershaven.com. It's right there on the screen. If you were in the financial industry, in the banking industry in 2008, you probably couldn't have prepared for what happened that year and how that changed. Well, it's almost 10 years now, which is hard to imagine. How do you deal with, and what do you do? What are strategies that you do when you talk to these boards and you're going to help these companies and these CEOs to prepare for the next wave of change that they may not even see coming right now? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it is so true. It's interesting. One of the latest studies talked about the fact that the biggest fear that CEOs have today is not technology or a qualified workforce. It is quite literally the imposter syndrome. Somebody's going to figure out, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's because of the speed and the complexity of the change that you're describing. So, the first thing that you have to know is a little bit of change management. So most people think strategy is where it stops, where in fact, if you're going to execute change, you've got to do the people side of it. And that's the change management plan. That's literally knowing you as the CEO, where are you in all of the things that are coming at you, and where are the rest of your team in that? So the bottom line for me is I go in and work with them not just on strategy, but on how to personally deal with the impact of change. And that's ever so important now with the generational transitions. We've spent years talking about the boomers and millennials, but Z is now coming along. And we have a collaborative workforce right now. Zs like to work very independently. So one of the things that leaders have got to focus on now is not only the environment of change, but the fact that they're getting ready to have another generation enter the workforce that is going to handle change very differently.
Yeah, because change is always something I found in the public company sector, especially if you're dealing with a CEO. They can be the biggest strength, but also the biggest weakness, because especially when you're dealing with a CEO who's, if it's a company that's dealing with products or something that they've incubated, they've seen all the way through, and they hold it so close to the vest, that getting to the point where they can make rational decisions on change that can get them to that breakthrough point to get to the next level. How do you deal with someone who's a CEO that's like that holds it so close to the vest, can't see the forest through the trees?
Yeah, I think in that circumstance, that absolutely requires individual ongoing executive coaching, because there has to be an awareness of whether or not you're someone who actually does that. One of the things that I find interesting oftentimes is that people don't recognize the difference between a naysayer and an ostrich. A naysayer is someone who sees the change coming and helps you actually find the gaps about how to make the big leaps and help you to get out of that mode of paralysis that you're describing.
Yeah.
But an ostrich is someone who's put their head in the sand and said, yeah, it's not going to happen on my watch. I'm not going to deal with it. And so we want to help our naysayers actually become part of that process that helps the CEO keep moving forward so that product keeps coming to market and that they stay relevant.
Yeah. Well, I know you're doing a lot of good work at the Leaders Haven. Again, we're speaking with Cynthia Mills, founder, president, and CEO of the Leaders Haven. Visit them online at theleadershaven.com. What keeps you motivated every morning? What keeps you motivated? What do you love? What's your passion about what you do? What keeps you going?
The moment when, whether it's an individual or whether it's a board of directors, recognizes that they have exceeded their expectations of themselves is absolutely magic. You know, in the strategic retreat, it's when a board of directors looks up and says, wow, I never would have believed that we could have gotten this far in a day or two. You know, in a leadership development program, it's when there's a breakthrough and someone sees that the way that they choose to lead or their style is impacting their team negatively. And so they go about creating a different roadmap for that. You know, in individual coaching, it's when people recognize that behaviors and actions aren't actually helping them professionally or organizationally. So I live for those moments. They're incredibly addictive. And when they happen, you know that possibility's been born.
And in closing, I know you've been become quite the prolific writer. As I said, you wrote the chapter in Jack Canfield. You co-authored in The Big Secret. Tell me why you like to write these books. What you get out of it personally, and what are you working on now?
Sure. My intention is that when my reader hits critical moments in their lives, that there will be content either from a business standpoint, a leadership standpoint, or a faith-based inspirational standpoint that will meet them in those moments and help them to have the kind of transformational experiences that allow them to create great impact. So in the business sector, I've also written CEO's First 90 Days, Breathing Tips for the Other End of the Fire Hose, to help people make the transition in. In the leadership area this year, I was a co-author with for the Female Factor, a confidence guide for women. Next month, Breaking the Concrete Ceiling will come out in that genre. And then in the inspirational area, the very first book I ever wrote was The Empty Front Porch, Soul Sitting to Design Your Porch-to-Porch Plan. And that's going to be followed by The Hummingbird Dance in 2018, and then in 2019, an as yet unnamed book.
Wow, lots of great stuff coming out. Cynthia Mills, founder, president, and CEO of The Leaders Haven. Visit them online at www.theleadershaven.com. Thank you so much for appearing on the show. We'd love to have you back.
Thanks so much. It was my delight.
Thank you very much.